And I've actually been sucked in, and trying to solve, some of the unsolved problems, especially in the NFT space, where I think it is a magical new way to start a business if done right. And I think no one has really cracked the code on this. So it's a really interesting time and space. Same thing with tokenomics. I think if you get it right, it is an entirely new way to build your business about rewarding your customers, through liquid currencies that reward certain behaviors. It's just a very, very new thing, new infrastructure. And I think it plays to the zeitgeist of this next generation where they don't want all of the profits to accrue to people at the top. They want to participate in building a business, participate in the proceeds of the business if the business does well. They want to be able to shout from the rooftops and be proud of the thing that they're associating with. Like
they want to be like equity holders in that company, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. We've been incredibly disconnected over the past couple of years. Like no one can deny that, between what happened with the pandemic, but also politics are just nasty. People don't really want to have the dialogue around really difficult topics. But the past couple of years have been really, really bad, and people have felt more disconnected from just about everything in life than they ever have before. And what I found is that in the Web3 space, if you ever want to take a pessimist and turn them into an optimist, all you should do is have them find an NFT project that they're interested in, have them go mint an NFT at 0.05 ETH or, somewhere around $100 today, and have them join a Discord group and start listening in on Twitter Spaces that NFT project holds. And they will be an optimist almost overnight. They will throw themselves into the project. They'll have a cause. They'll find themselves with hundreds of new friends. They'll have a common topic to talk about that isn't negative. They'll feel like they can participate in actually building something. They feel like they can help kink the curve on the outcome. And they feel like there's actually a monetary return that could come if this particular project ends up doing well and taking off. So it's a really interesting innovation to say you can spin up a community around purpose, have a fundraising event called an NFT Mint, create a treasury around that team that now has to actually go build the business.
But what is the business they are building? Like, isn't this just the same thing as like the chat rooms around the penny stocks where you could like chat with a bunch of other people who liked this company and you all had the same underlying asset you were trying to promote? It's effectively what's happening here. And that if the value of that asset went up, penny stock or NFT, then everybody in that community wins, which makes sense, like economically, you all win together. But at the end of the day, isn't it just like speculative art projects? Like, what's the difference?
There's going to be some chart someone comes out with eventually that has like organized religion down and NFT project up and, number of people like on NFTs.
So there's the front end of a project and the back end of a project. And I think the front end of the project, we've seen 10,000 experiments in the space, if you want to think about it that way, about 10,000 projects listed on OpenSea. Of those 10,000 projects, you have to ask yourself, how many have teams on the other side that actually know how to build businesses and are working backwards from, some vision that's going to turn into something of durable value? That's questionable, right? The answer might be 100. The answer might be 50. The answer might be none. The answer is not 10,000. But what I find so interesting is the NFT process, the technology behind it, the ability to spin up communities, the communication vehicles that are now available that were not available in the past, are inverting the order of operations of building a business if done correctly. You don't have very many business teams on the other side that are very good and capable of building something of durable value.
The only thing you described, and I want to make sure I understand it, but the only thing that you described that is different this time is essentially the product is like a JPEG I can put on a blockchain. But besides that, the idea of like organizing a team around a central topic and communication around that topic and sharing of information and aligning incentives and all of these same things are essentially the equivalent of like anyone starting any business at any time post internet, right? You always had access to chat. You always had access to phone calls and, Discord's cool and new. I think Discord's kind of an amazing tool set, right? But the crypto piece of it is basically a like mental shortcut on the product. Because kind of what we're saying is, hey, we're going to make all of this easy. And then we're actually going to make the product, the thing that ultimately is supposed to have value and eventually make money in a normal world, we're going to make that part easy too. And in reality, like products are not, that's the hard part.
Yeah. So again, this is what's interesting is that it has not been solved because you haven't seen very many teams come together that have the business acumen to complete the story. So when you lower the barriers of entry to zero, you get a lot of people coming into a space and like it's a cash grab. Like there's a lot of money that's being pulled out of the ecosystem into the hands of creators that aren't actually creating anything. But what's interesting is if you did have a talented team, the ability to spin up these communities, have the communication vehicles around them, the ability to have shared purpose, like these are all about the ethos of what Web3 is about. And I think you're going to see new businesses built in this particular way. You're going to see more participation of your own customers in the economics of your product. So, an example, I think a lot of these businesses, if you get the tokenomics right, are trading lower acquisition costs because people are so excited about the product and they shout from the rooftops about it and they become your marketing channel. And you're trading it for lower economics on the back end because you're sharing in the economics with your own customers.
Can I ask you about that? Because I keep hearing that. And I want to make sure I understand the mechanics of this, because when we say share in the economics, usually how I translate that is a percentage of the equity or of the revenue, right? There's some like future income stream, because ultimately I want to get cash, right? Because I actually want to like buy something. So we say you get to share in the economics, but then I actually understand what's going on here. And really what we're saying is you get early access to the coin, which is likely to run up in value as we add more users, right? As like more people come on. And then eventually you get to this like funky economic system where you're actually incentivized to then get rid of the coin that you own and move to the next one because your expected return on the coin itself is trending down because the coin itself has no future cash flows, right? It has no income stream. It's just a coin. So, and it's made up and has no real.
You're describing poor tokenomics.
Yeah. So what's a good one? That's kind of what I'm asking, I guess. Like what would, is it a rev share?
Imagine if you had spun up AWS in a Web3 context and the token represented AWS credits. And before AWS had actually been created, you could buy those credits at a very, deep discount to what they would trade at once the system was actually created, up and running, and had utility.
Yeah, like a prepay for a product, like Tesla taking in cash for the cars that they're going to build.
Right. But those AWS credits would be incredibly useful and incredibly valuable, and you would have bought them at an incredible discount to what they're worth once the system is actually up and running. So that would be an example of a tokenomic system that could work. Now, part of the problem is when you have a speculative world, when you have full liquidity, I think there's a duration mismatch issue with a lot of the tokenomics where a lot of the tokens are tradable before there's actually utility.
Yes.
Right. Then you have all sorts of weird incentives that are coming into play where people are trading their AWS credits, to use that example, while AWS is still being built. And there's a lot of speculation about what is this thing going to be worth? What is it going to cost? What are these credits going to be worth? And, then you've created a very liquid market around something that has no utility except in the future.
Even more importantly, I would argue, Frank, is like you have a bunch of users who actually aren't users. They're not real. like they're there, they exist, it's somebody's dollar, but they're not there because they're interested in your product and have any sort of like benefit to your product development lifecycle and feedback. They're there to speculate on the future utility of your product, which is part of why I feel like it's actually almost inversely related to the right way to do product design. Like what you really want in an ideal world is actually more of like what a Tesla did, which is you have people put up real money to buy the product, like a Kickstarter or whatever the use case is, because then you can at least measure that they're there because they want the thing you're building. The tradability aspect of it, to me, actually introduces a factor that if I were building a company trying to figure out what that product is, it's noise. I mean, to your whole point of looking at the data, like that is noisy data. Who's actually there because they want to use the, Web3 AWS, and who's there because they want to trade the actual token?
Liquidity is both a feature and a flaw. And I think that it's created a duration mismatch issue at almost every single aspect of the Web3 ecosystem that will need to be solved in order to build big, durable businesses, right? So, when I talk about being fascinated by tokenomics, I don't think it's the solution to everything. In fact, I think it's the reason for a lot of problems in the ecosystem, right? So if you actually are able to get liquidity on something before there's actual utility, you're basically trading on the option value of what that will be worth at some point in the future. You're a speculator.
You're a speculator. Yeah.
And there's a lot of speculation going on in the space, which, as you can see by tokens going up and tokens going down, like there are a lot of people making money and a lot of people getting wrecked, because of the speculation involved. But I find the mechanics of tokenomics interesting. I find the mechanics of NFTs and the ability to invert the order of operations of building a business fascinating.